the panel. So if I can start with Dr. BAW Shergill, who is chair of the Skin Cancer Prevention Committee, and he can only be with us until past. So thank you very much and welcome.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. By way of background, I'm a consultant dermatologist who treats skin cancer. I'm here in the lovely county of Sussex. I work in Kent, Surrey and Sussex treating skin cancer with various different techniques. I'm also chair of the British Association of Dermatologists Skin Cancer Prevention Committee. Our role is to try and stop people from having these malignancies in the first place. And we have a specialised campaign, a SunSmart campaign that we use in melanoma awareness every year in May, as well as other events throughout the year.
Thank you. And if you would like to give your presentation, that'd be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, sure. I'll try and keep it short and sweet. Essentially, what I've been doing this afternoon is cutting out skin cancer. There are year-on-year increases of at least 5% in the incidence of skin cancer throughout the UK. It's going up, and there doesn't seem to be an awful lot that we can do about it other than picking it up early and hopefully preventing people from indulging in those behaviours that are going to give them skin cancer, such as sunbathing or just not applying their sun cream and burning. There's a lot of myths out there. So we spend a lot of our time correcting those myths. But one of these things in particular that we need are more eyes. You need more people who are dealing with skin, who have good relationships and can say to their clients, look, I think that mole looks abnormal. I think that spot isn't a spot. It might be a low-grade skin tumour, and I would like you to go and see a specialist because I'm worried about it and I'm concerned for you. And there is a great scope to upskill all the beauty therapists that we have in the UK so that they can reliably identify skin cancer and hopefully speed diagnosis, which will eventually lead to far better cure rates and improve in terms of absolute morbidity and mortality for patients, and cheaper catch things early.
Thank you, Dr. Shergill. Have we seen that you've got to go at past? I'm just wondering if anybody's got any questions while we've got you on the line. I can see Carolyn is on the call again. I mean, I suppose, you know, I would ask you, Doctor, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm fair-skinned, ginger hair, and acutely aware of my kind of issues regarding, I've got a very high risk, I suppose, in terms of skin cancer. And, you know, I've got 2 children who are also very fair and fair-skinned, and I drill into them the important issue of putting on skin cream and skin protection as a daily kind of routine for them, and they're very good at it. But for people of my age and above, you know, we've not grown up like that. I mean, what advice would you give to people my age, I suppose?
Well, it's interesting. We're seeing skin cancer in people in their 20s upwards, and it's not so much, I think fewer people are sunbathing, but quite a few more are just having lifestyles. We encourage people to have an outdoor lifestyle. There's so many hobbies you can indulge with. You know, you can be paddle boarding and get sunburnt. You can even garden, especially during lockdown, gardening sunburn. There's quite a lot of that going on as well. We've seen quite a lot of these kind of problems, and often you just get caught out. It's the country we live in, you know, it's 4 seasons in one day.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, you know, when I think of sunbeds and people going on to sunbeds and these sunbed tanning shops, they're not for people of my skin at all, but I do see people still going into them, and I wonder whether there's enough public awareness out there of what the issues actually are.
Well, we've tried our best to try, you know, we've lobbied to get sunbeds banned initially, but then luckily now there's a moratorium about not having under 18s having access to sunbeds, and I think that's a great thing coming through, and a lot more responsibility throughout the beauty industry. I mean, the beauty industry has a fantastic opportunity to, you know, in terms of its offer to their clients, about all the things they can do to help support skin health.
Thank you. Carolyn, I can see you're on the line now. Have you got any questions that you'd like to ask while we've got Dr. Shergill on the line?
Yeah, hi Bob. It's Susan Moss. I'm on a train. I actually worked on the original sunbed bill. I worked on an MP. We managed to get it through under the private members bill.
Yes.
I think that we've moved on to being through without needing private members bill. What would you ideally like to see?
Well, you know, ideally, I'd love to get rid of the causing.
Sunday. We've managed to get illegal frontal extremes and coin operated. We've done that. So what more can we do?
Well, to be honest, again, it's all about, I mean, and again, the beauty industry as a whole have a responsibility about, you know, the safest tan is out of a bottle. I appreciate you can't legislate away everything, and we have to give people choice, but we can certainly help them inform their choices. I'd love to click a switch and get rid of sunbeds. I don't think it's going to happen that easily, but I think we can educate and we can actually promote an ideal of attractive skin that doesn't require damaging it.
Is it just sun then, doctor, that you think, well, is it just sun that is the risk factor in getting skin cancer?
It's the biggest factor. And I think, I mean, when we look at patients, what we can normally tell is if they're under the age of, say, 60, pretty much most of the sun damage they'll get is under the age of 20. 80% is what we find. So sunburn under the age of 20 is a strong risk factor for melanoma. And melanoma patients are actually in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, not the kind of what you would have thought. But they're only 1/10 of all the skin cancer in the UK. 90% are what we call keratinocyte tumours, rodent ulcers, basal cell carcinomas. They make up the bulk of the surgical workload of what we're seeing in clinic. We think about maybe 250,000 going up to 300,000 cases a year.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for that. And if we can now move on to our second speaker, who is Geoff Holmes from the Dermatology Council for England. Geoff, I'm looking for you. There you are. There you are. Thank you, Geoff. Want to introduce yourself and just tell us about the work that you're doing and your thoughts, please.
Yes, okay. I'm the chair of the Dermatology Council for England, which is a group that represents all the stakeholders involved with dermatology. So we've got professional bodies, we've got patient support groups, we've got industry, and we've got an all-parliamentary party group ourselves. So we work together across all these stakeholders to highlight the issues and campaign. We have campaigned about sunbeds and supported the BAD and other organisations in the work that's gone on with sunbeds. And we look at various other issues as well. And one of the key issues with skin cancer is its knock-on effect on dermatology. Because it's an increasing incidence, lots of patients going to see a dermatologist, it actually means there's a bottleneck for patients with non-cancerous disease trying to see their dermatologists. So it's important that we get the balance right and that patients are seen when they need to be seen. But it does have this huge effect on the dermatology environment. A lot of their workload is now skin cancer because of its increasing incidence. So it's very important when we look at the beauty and the health sector that they can advise. They're working with their clients on a regular basis. They do have access to them. They can advise them to take care, to protect, to stop their skin wrinkling. They're also protecting against further damage like the sun damage that can cause the cancers and things. So there are lots of ways which they can support that safe sun, but also, more importantly, they can have eyes on. And if they see something that's not right, they don't necessarily have to diagnose it, but they have to get their patient, their client, to see somebody who can as soon as possible. And they'll be trusted in that. Very often patients put off going to see somebody because they think it's nothing. And if somebody with a little bit of authority can tell them to actually go and get a referral and get their mole looked at, then that might help with early detection. And we all know that early detection leads to good resolution.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's really interesting. Thank you, Geoff. I mean, I think we're acutely aware of early detection, and we've got a colleague who is Chris Bryant, who went for a haircut and got an early detection by his barber of a melanoma on the back of his head. So he's been very forthright in telling people about the importance of early detection, and certainly beauty and hair industry in having a role in this.
I think it's
sorry, Geoff.
Responsibility to speak up if you see something that's not right, and you don't have to be able to diagnose, but if you see something that's not right, you need to speak up. We don't see our own back, we don't see the back of our own head. We don't actually look at our skin the way that somebody else might if they're treating us. So it's important that those people take that responsibility.
Thanks, Geoff. Please now can we hear from Karis from Cancer Research UK. Karis.
Hi there, thanks for having me. So my name is Karis. I work at Cancer Research UK, which is the world's leading cancer charity dedicated to saving lives through research. So this is across prevention, diagnosis and treatment. So melanoma skin cancer, which is the most serious form of skin cancer, is the 5th most common cancer in the UK at the moment. But it's largely a preventable cancer, so up to 9 in 10 cases of that is through not being safe in the sun. So a really important part of our work is teaching people how to be safe in the sun. So the 3 key messages of when the sun is strong, spend some time in the shade, make sure you're covering it with clothing, hats, sunglasses, and regularly reapplying sunscreen. So I think like we said before, there's lots of myths around sun safety. So making sure we're kind of busting some of those myths, and that sun safety isn't all just about sunscreen. Sunscreen is great and it works, but in combination with using the shade and clothing as well. And yeah, early diagnosis as well, really important. Almost all people diagnosed with melanoma skin cancer at stage 1 survive their disease for at least 5 years. But the later it's diagnosed, we start to see that number drop down. So I work in the health information team at Cancer Research UK, which is a team dedicated to review all the scientific evidence for cancer risk factors, so including UV and sun, and then translating what that means for the public. So it's obviously we have our own funded research, but the role of my team is to look at the research and evaluate it and decide of everything across the world what's important to the public and how we translate that and make it a kind of useful and tangible message to people. So as well as providing our own comms from the team on website and leaflets, we also support the charity really widely. So we work with health professionals and help teaching them about spotting cancer and safety netting and advising their patients. We also have nurses and roadshow teams that go out into the community and to harder reach areas to help give people that advice, and supporting policy as well. So we were involved in lobbying for the restriction on sunbed use, and we run health campaigns as well. So not this year, but for 3 years previous, we've ran a campaign called Own Your Tone, which is targeted at a slightly younger demographic. As most cancers are more common as you get older, that's usually where a lot of our kind of targeting goes. But with some of the sun messaging, your exposure to UV and sun at a young age is something that really increases your risk. So instead of kind of just telling people what they should and shouldn't be doing, we try to kind of break down some of the social norms around tanning, and trying to. So the message of the campaign really is own your tone. So whatever your natural skin tone or skin type is, that's beautiful, and you should embrace that natural tone. There's no need to go outside and try and tan to change it. And kind of breaking those myths about there's no such thing as safe tanning and what counts as sunburn and all those types of things. Another piece of work we do public facing is through our corporate partnerships, which we have across lots of broad aspects of health. We have a corporate partnership with Nivea, and together with them we put some information out there to make sure people are enjoying the sun safely, the sun safely. So those 3 messages about shade, clothing, and using sunscreen and how to use it, that has a great wide reach through kind of television adverts and things like that. So we touched on the importance of ED. Our kind of message at COK is knowing your body and listening to your body. So we're all totally different. Our bodies are totally different. We all have different kind of moles and marks on our skin that may be normal for us, but they aren't. So you kind of advise people to know what their body is like normally. So if something's different, they're more able to spot it and do something about it. And catching cancer early, although it has, you know, massive upsides of increasing survival, kind of like anything in health, in public health, everything has a downside, unfortunately. So there is something in cancer called overdiagnosis. So basically all cancers aren't the same. We never know which is growing fast, which is growing slowly, what they might turn into. So what overdiagnosis means is you might pick up a cancer, you might find it and treat it, but that cancer itself would never really go on to do any damage or cause anyone a problem. So that person's then had treatment, which is really stressful for them. It has, you know, physical side effects. There's a cost attached to it, monetary wise, and that treatment would never be needed. But it's so complicated because you never know which cancers are going to come on to become what. So it's different for different cancer types. So skin cancer is one that we think overdiagnosis is playing a pretty big role because it has some of the key features, like it has a very high survival rate. So it's really important when we're thinking about interventions like this with the beauty industry and how people could be trained to look at and spot things, that we're trying to look out for the right things and avoid overdiagnosis. So skin cancer comes with an age-related risk. So making sure that, you know, if it's an older patient, that's more likely. And I guess more so than kind of spotting and diagnosing, we're saying people don't need to diagnose, but having someone that, you know, you have a relationship and trust with that can kind of encourage you to know your body. So some of the things that we might see our beauticians for are things that might be a bit intimate or a bit embarrassing. So, you know, if you could have conversations about that, why can't you have conversations about your health? And I think for some of the more harder to treat skin cancers, so things like some of the acral lentiginous, they're often found under fingernails and palms of your feet, which are things that people might not spend much time looking at, but your beautician might. So that's really interesting to consider, and kind of being aware of those things are harder to spot, especially for people with darker skin tones, and being aware of that, and that just because your skin tone is darker, your risk is lower, but it still means, you know, you can still get cancer because you have skin, so you can get skin cancer. I think that's as much as you need from me for now.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful, Karis. If I can now turn to Marie Tudor. You can introduce yourself, please, and just like everybody else has done, give us a brief outline. That'd be fantastic. We can't hear you. You're muted. That's brilliant.
Me today. I'm on the shores of Loch Lomond in a motorhome, if you're wondering where I am.
Well, we've got Wales, we've got Scotland. Fantastic.
Nations here, isn't it? Yeah, I'm Marie and I'm the CEO of the national skin cancer charity Skcin. When you say CEO, it always makes me laugh because you think of a national outfit with lots of staff and lots of money, and we have neither of those things. We're a small and mighty charity. Our charity was born out of the loss of a loved one to melanoma 14 years ago, and onward from that, the charity were formed because the family discovered one of the most important things was that 86% of skin cancers are preventable. So they took a difficult decision to either look at research and raise money for research, look at patient support, or look at educational intervention. And we took the complete other end of the spectrum and we chose educational intervention as a route to go. So for 14 years, we've been dedicated solely to educational intervention for skin cancer. So that's quite unique as a charity because we're the only charity that is doing that in the UK. And because we are solely dedicated to it, we make great impact in what we're trying to achieve. We offer 5 national accreditation schemes, and these schemes are designed to make impact, have measured outcomes. So we run a Sunsafe School scheme, a Sunsafe Nursery scheme, a Sunsafe Workplace scheme, and our most successful year to date was MASS, which stands for Melanoma and Skin Cancer Early Detection. We'd also done face-to-face sessions with various partners, consultant dermatologists, but we knew this was a key audience we wanted to engage with. Not that they're at risk, but they are influential because beauty therapists have a unique relationship with their clients. We launched the training in 2018, and it was an online e-learning training developed by the charity exclusively with the support of 2 consultant dermatologists. Our initial target was to train 1,000 businesses for our first year. Considering we're a small charity that relies on donations, we get no public funding, no grants, no nothing. And within a week, we'd had 1,000 people sign up. So we went on to continue with that success. The online training is developed to provide training to the therapist to look at the signs and symptoms of what to look out for when trying to identify skin cancers. The training was launched 3 months into the training. This is our success story. A beauty therapist with 30 years skin knowledge identified, I think it was 8 clients she referred to her GP. She'd done our training and thought, I'll put into practice what I've learned. She referred 8 of those clients, 5 were skin cancers and 3 were melanomas. And that for us was just heaven sent, because that beauty therapist saved lives. You just cannot, begin to believe what that is about. Since then, we've gone on, we've now got 13,000 people registered in only 2 years. The training has gone global in terms of people sign up in Australia, New Zealand. In the UK, we have 6,000 people that have taken the training. And we know from NHS last year that the skin cancer referrals were up 20%. And we are very confident that that is down to the training and the beauty industry and what they're doing. From that target of 1,000, we want to obviously carry on and continue. We offered the training for free, which, if I'm totally honest, nearly brought the charity to its knees. But we now charge £20 for the training. And what's been delighted for us is it's been totally embraced by FabTac, the National Hair Federation, Habia. They've all looked at it and gone, this is heaven sent. This is exactly what the industry needs. People have been in the industry for years. This is exactly what we need to pursue. We've now, as a mission, said that what we want to do is get this made mandatory on the national curriculum. We also want it to be made available as accessible as easy as possible. It's interesting that during the pandemic, we had our busiest month ever, which was March, which was just totally ironic because people were thinking, actually, now is the time for me to upskill and do some online e-learning training. We would like the scheme to be adopted by public health. And we'd also like to have a national campaign with the rest of the UK and the beauty industry, being as I was turned down by the Department of Health, that a national campaign wasn't required.
Thank you for that. Thanks very much, Murray. Can we now
to this £350 million gets spent on treating NHS skin cancer patients, and that for what is an absolute no-brainer. If it's costing 350 million, which is an estimated figure, it's probably more than that. That why is no one supporting educational intervention at a level, starting with school children at an early age, but also embracing the beauty industry where it can save lives and mitigate the burden to the health service?
Yeah. Prevention is always better than the cure, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, thank you. If we can now turn to Victor. Victor, if you can introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about what you're doing and your perspective. And thank you very much. Over to you, Victor.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Victor. I'm a senior chartered environmental health practitioner. I'm also the co-chair for the London Special Treatments Working Group and a trustee for the Joint Council for Cosmetic Practitioners. What I'd like to do is give a brief overview of the current regulation or lack of in the UK around UV tan in treatments, and identify a few areas as a regulator that I feel do need improvement. So the regulation of UV tanning varies greatly across the country. And as we heard earlier from the doctor, until recently we didn't have any specific legislation aimed at controlling the cosmetic use of sunbeds. So in April 2011, the Sunbeds Regulation Act came out, and it imposed a duty on everyone involved in carrying on a sunbed business to ensure that no persons under the age of 18 used or was offered a sunbed. There are also regulations setting maximum UV outputs for sunbeds. So sunbeds with a UV output above this level are deemed unsafe. And this is because of the significantly higher risk of sunbed users overexposing themselves and burning. I'm fortunate enough to work for a London borough where we are able to license premises offering special treatments, and we are therefore able to regulate treatments to some extent. So in London, local authorities adopted the London Local Authorities Act 1991, which requires establishments offering special treatments, and that includes UV tanning, to apply for and obtain a license. And local authorities can prescribe conditions for all classes of treatments offered, and they often include conditions for premises standards, safety and training requirements. And if operators breach these conditions, they can be prosecuted and have their license revoked. So the licensing conditions are drafted at a local level, and therefore they can vary greatly from borough to borough, particularly with regards to the acceptable level of training for sunbed operators, as there's currently no mandatory requirement for operators to hold a regulated qualification. So some local authorities will accept an operator to have a regulated qualification, whereas others may be happy accepting manufacturer's training as a minimum requirement. I feel that a good level of training is imperative in providing safe UV tanning treatments. A suitably trained operator is more likely to take the necessary precautions and be able to properly advise the client regarding the safe use of a sunbed, taking into consideration their skin type and any relevant medical history or contraindications identified during the consultation. The rest of England, and as far as I'm aware, much of the UK, does not benefit from a registration or licensing regime that covers UV tanning treatments. Instead, they're required to use more general legislative provisions that may be applied to the use of sunbeds, which include the Health and Safety at Work Act and Management of Health and Safety at Work regulations. However, changes to the Local Authority National Enforcement Code means that programmed inspections are no longer required, and we are not carrying out these inspections anymore. This means that many businesses that have sunbeds are not inspected at all unless intelligence suggests that the risks are not being effectively managed at that premises. So what I feel really needs to happen in order to better regulate the industry is I do feel we need new direct legislation to better regulate treatments offered by the beauty industry, including UV tanning, by means of either licensing or registration. We need a standardized approach for only accepting regulated qualifications for those offering UV tanning treatments, and standardized conditions throughout for the operator and the premises. And that would include the requirement for detailed consultations prior to the treatments being offered, and the operator giving information on the risks involved when using such equipment.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Caroline Harris in a minute, but if I can just ask you, Victor, and open it up for questions, by the way, if I can just ask you, Victor, a very quick question, which in your role as it is, have your numbers of people like you and in your role been cut back over recent years?
Yeah, massively, especially when the code changed, so we don't actually carry out any proactive inspections anymore. It means that we no longer just turn up to a business and see how they're getting on and whether they're compliant or not. It would have to be complaint based, and we'd have to have the intelligence to go in there. So because of that, positions were axed. There are far fewer enforcement officers doing the job I do now than there were 8 years ago.
Thank you. And ish, just estimate, when you say far fewer, what, 50% far fewer, 30% far fewer?
Well, health and safety wise, I would say is over a 50% cut, with food officers taking on the responsibility for health and safety, and licensing officers taking on the role of the enforcement officers, a role that was previously done by environmental health officers.
All right, thank you very much. That's really interesting. Caroline, I know that you're very keen to come in, so the floor is yours. You're on mute.
Thank you, Judah. Thank you so much. And Victor, I feel your pain on that one, because I think it's the caps across local authorities, and its trading standards which have been decimated, and we've seen some other subjects, the response to that. But I think we need to be thinking outside the box on this. And for me, I actually helped write the Sunbed Bill in conjunction with Cancer Research UK and the Teenage Cancer Trust, and I actually did some work with Skcin as well at the time. I was a parliamentary assistant at that time. I wasn't a member of parliament, but Julie Morgan actually managed to get the bill through, and I worked for probably 2 years in writing that bill. And at the time, our biggest objection was coming from the sunbed owners, and primarily from a company called Console, who seemed to have had the market cornered. What I would say about, I think it was Bob said at the beginning of this, we're never going to see the time when there are no sunbeds. The only reason that the sunbed lobby were in any way effective then is because of lobbying, and I've yet to meet the lobby that I haven't been able to crack. The gambling lobby tried to do me, and they didn't succeed. And if getting rid of sunbeds altogether is what we need to do, then I'm more than happy to take that fight on and make sure we do that. What we need to do is several things. We need to raise the profile. We need to raise the profile of the issue. And the way that we did that previously was using celebrity endorsements. We had Nicola Roberts, and we had the then wife of Gary Lineker. And with Facebook, we took this into the House of Commons. Facebook took ownership of that side of it, and they were saying that it was as important. We all get that blocking hand is wonderful, and we all get that to do that, it makes us feel better. It's a well-being thing. Totally agree with that. But there's other ways of doing it, as we know, with the beauty industry. So I think we really need to think about doing a national campaign where we can take this message across the country with Nivea, like Karis have mentioned. Back in the days, it was with Boots, and Boots helped us organise a national campaign. We went around really all the constituencies of this country, and we did sun hats and free samples of Nivea, and we told people the dangers. One of the things which is really effective is that we set up little clinics, and we can do this in House of Commons, Jude, where people come in and they can say to somebody, I've got a little mole here, what do you think it is? 9 out of 10 times it will be nothing, but the very fact that people take enough interest to ask those questions, and sometimes you're able to save a life. You can get a lot of media attention around that, and that in itself will help raise the profile. I think it was Geoff who mentioned an APPG. Let us know which APPG that is, Geoff, because we'd be really keen to work with them to get something going, certainly in Westminster, if not working with Cancer Research UK. And I think really importantly is the Teenage Cancer Trust, because this is the target audience that we need to be looking at, is young people who are so impressed by having a tan, they're prepared to go and have a sunbed tan. What we also need to do is we need to be getting this onto the curriculum for training for beauticians. And that's something that we can do in terms of the APPG when we write our recommendations on how we see qualifications and standards going forward. It's really important that this becomes a mandatory part of beauticians' training. So wherever they train, preferably within a college environment, it needs to be part of the curriculum for them. Skcin, I'm surprised that you only charge £20 because what you're offering is far, far more valuable. We need to see if there's a way that we can help get mandatory funding so that maybe you could get maybe grants or whatever to make it compulsory, but it needs to be part of the training.
Yeah,
and we ask you questions, not telling you what to do, but I'm quite passionate about this. And Gill, all over me if I don't shut up and listen to what she's going to say.
It brings us nicely to Jill Morris from City and Guilds. Jill.
Right, yes, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm chairman of the City and Guilds National Advisory Committee for Beauty Therapy, but that's a part-time voluntary role. I'm actually director of commercial development for an engineering company that makes equipment and products for the electrolysis market. I'd like to pick up on a few things. Marie is doing absolutely fantastic work, and a number of our customers have taken her course. But also something that Caroline's just said about training. Years ago, we wanted to include a little bit more on skin cancers into our initial training, but we were told there was a danger of beauty therapists, if they had a certain amount of knowledge, getting involved in diagnosis. And as we are not medically qualified, it was deemed that no, we shouldn't. So we've sort of fallen into a bit of a void. So it would be really good to have some guidance that we could send out to the awarding organisations that underpin all the qualifications to actually say to what depth can we go into, because we are not medical people. Also, the wording, and this is all historic, the wording that we use with our clients, we were told we mustn't scare them, we must just encourage them to go and see the doctor. But then again, we fell into this void of not being able to say something strong enough because we weren't medically qualified to be diagnosing, but just to say, oh, I've noticed a bit of a change in that mole. It seems to have become irregular, or it's not the size that it was before. I think perhaps next time you go to the doctors, you mention it. So that's not good enough. That's too weak. But you know, we are aware that we're not medics and medically qualified. So some guidance to the awarding organisations, to the wording that we can use with our therapists of tomorrow, and then carry that through the work that Marie is doing to bring it to existing therapists, and particularly electrologists that I work a lot with. We do see an awful lot of skin blemishes and stuff, so we could do with this guidance as well. And something that Karis said about sort of this social norm of a tan being acceptable. I wonder if there's any way we can work with the fashion industry and others to promote that a tan isn't a healthy look, to promote paler looking models, to have people that, you know, celebs that can be looked up to. Oh, she's pale. Oh, pale. Oh, so pale. Ah, pale is good. I mean, 150 years ago, if you were pale, it was a sign that you were well to do. You weren't working in the field in the sun and getting a tan. So, you know, that's it. Rant over.
We use Nicola Roberts, because Nicola Roberts has actually had a psychological obsession with tanning. She tried everything from taking the pills, sunbeds. You know, she was caked in repeated. I think she said every piece of clothing and towel she had was bright orange. She was obsessed, so she went down the opposite way of the pale was better. And what I was saying, Jill, was that I wouldn't want anyone to think that beauticians could diagnose, but I think we need to be able to give them enough information to signpost, and that's the really important bit. And I'm going to shut up.
I'd like to jump in if I can, just around some of the things about kind of mentioning, you know, the beauty industry and models. And I think it's being very careful, because obviously when we're talking about skin cancer, we're often talking about tanning, which is something that is, you know, something white people do largely more than other people to get more tanned. So it's kind of striking a very fine balance and being very careful that we're not promoting pale as something that should be seen as something good either. It's, you know, there's still companies out there selling like bleaching creams to people with darker skin tones. So it's about kind of making sure we can balance that nuance, that risk of people with lighter skin tones being higher and tanning behaviours being more prominent. But balancing that with the fact that like all skin tones are beautiful. If your skin is dark naturally, it's great. If your skin is pale naturally, it's great. And just trying not to change it, because what it is right. But yeah, like you said, that's kind of been ingrained in us for decades. And one thing was, you know, better because we thought this was better, and now tans more desirable. And that's the kind of thing, is like it's it is fashion, and it isn't like, there's no health thing associated with it. Like having a tan is not healthier. It's not a sign of health. It's a sign that your skin has started to damage. You know, if people are really keen to change their skin tone, then, you know, they can use self-tan products which are safer. But
Yeah,
kind of tanning in the sun or using sunbeds, there's no safe level of UV for a tan.
A dermatologist many years ago told me once, a good throwaway line to use is, a tan skin is a damaged skin. And I use that throughout my clinical life, and if ever I'm doing any training or whatever, I use that as well, because I think it's punchy, and you know, perhaps that could be used or updated.
Yeah, thank you. Has anybody got any more comments on?
Can I just pick up on what Jill was saying about our training in terms of what we've done? The training has been reviewed by the British Association of Dermatologists, and it has been reviewed by others as deemed good and fit for purpose, because we've got the wording right in what we're trying to do. It's about signposting and people having the perfect relationship with their clients to be able to signpost them. We're very clear in our training about not saying don't use the word diagnose, and we go through scenarios of about how to approach that with the customer, what things to say and what things not to say. So we do actually cover that off. The other thing is, with the training, we're quite passionate to really hold on to it. Last year when we developed the training in 2018, it nearly broke the charity, nearly brought us to our knees with the success of it. And we're keen to keep ownership of it. We're not a training provider. We are a charity that's come up with a solution, and we want to make it accessible to everybody. So what I'd like to do is work with those, whoever it is, awarding bodies. We're not a training provider, and I think that's what we're, a small charity that's really risen the bar in terms of what we've done.
What you could do, Marie, is you could work with the awarding organisations. You could license them.
Yeah.
Use your product, and then you get income, but the word is still out in a format that you know works.
That's what I think. Yeah, because for us, it's not about making it commercially viable. It's about making it so it's accessible to everybody, and as long as we could sustain the cost of covering the cost, that's what we're really interested in. So we're passionate about that. With regards to a campaign just before lockdown, people probably won't remember this, but over 10 years ago we did a campaign with McCann, a London-based PR media agency, and we did a campaign which was along the basis of that you can get a suntan by looking at a computer screen, which I know sounds absolutely ludicrous, but the effort and PR and media that went into it, it was totally mis-selling, but everybody fell for it. These people that were looking for a tan absolutely went, signed up for a subscription, and then when it went live, obviously it was all fake. That went, this was before the likes of social media, went all over the world. We're on the front page of national newspapers, and that's what really catapulted Skcin into the charity arena. That was 10 years ago, and it's interesting because McCann have come back to us again and said, we'd like to try and help you out. What would you want to do? And we've said a national awareness campaign. And they've gone off, this was just in January, February, with some initial ideas of things we could do with the beauty industry that could catapult a campaign. And obviously it all got pulled because of COVID. So I think to go as an APPG to them now and to work with Skcin, I think would be something that possibly they could look at. They were doing it for us as a no prono, as a freebie, because they knew that we were, they have to do so much work for free per year. Their campaign that they did with us was so successful, they won awards for it. So we're keen to work with them again, but obviously everything got pulled because it involved going to all the beauty shows, it involved British Beauty Awards, all sorts of different combinations of things that were going to be national campaigns, and it all got completely pulled. So I can pick up on that again, and I'm quite happy to have a separate conversation to see if we can drive that with the APPG again.
That'd be really, really useful, and I think both me and Caroline would be very happy to talk to you further about that. That'd be very useful.
The other report is the other APPG that we were heavily involved in is the APPG for Skcin, which is headed up by Sir Edward Lee. They've just issued a report this week on skin cancer, and it's called The State of the Nation. And it's quite shocking statistics, because they're saying that the skin cancer rates have increased by 45% in the last decade, and we are looking at over 400,000 cases by 2025. And they also did 2015 a full review of the sunbed legislation, because it was, our aim was to really license sunbeds, because obviously you're involved in the initial legislation in 2010. Our aim was to relook at it again and get people licensed for having sunbeds in shops, and that was not to be. We faced huge challenges. We last year were threatened with legal action by the Sunbed Association for having our beliefs and ethics questioned, which as a charity we didn't want to face, and we didn't want to have our heads risen above the parapet for lobbying to save people's lives. And what we get attacked with is legal action because information is incorrect, because the Sunbed Association do not believe there's a link between sunbeds and skin cancer. That they won't go to the likes of Cancer Research or the World Health Organization or the NHS and sue them. They want to sue a smaller charity like us, which is, I find it absolutely despicable, and quite sad and daunting for a charity like us, where we're a small family-run charity. But you know, he's gone off the case now because you know, there's other things. There has been a UK ban that's been a long time going, but we don't seem to get the traction with it. So what we'd like to see is legislation, because we value working with the beauty industry. We think collaboration and education is the route to go, and we would like to see licensing, but I know that is no easy task. They have banned sunbeds in Australia, and it took them 7 years in Australia to ban sunbeds. They've banned them in Brazil. I think France has had a go. And I think Ireland has had a go as well. So it's no easy task, but you know, I would think if we can go down the route of collaboration first and foremost as a legislation route, and then look at a ban further on. But as a charity as we are, we've decided to go down the education route for the skin cancer route, because we just feel that's the way that we can make action and save lives, which is what our work is all about.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and I think that's a very good point of which to finish this session. It's been really very useful. I'm very grateful to everybody. We're very grateful to everybody for attending today and giving us your insights. I think, you know, I am aware that we'll be up against it, but anything worth doing is always difficult, is my view. So I'm happy that we all get together and talk further about this, about how we can go forward. Caroline, do you want to add any remarks and closing remarks as co-chair?
Go on then. I love it that you said. I love it that you said that they were trying to sue you. I've come across these bastards before. We love them.
Fair enough. Well, thank you ever so much. And I think it's fair to say that we will be in touch. But please get in touch with us if you think that there's anything that we need to take up further. But thank you ever so much. For those who have travelled, have a safe journey. For those who are travelling, have a safe journey. And for those who are in Scotland, have a lovely time. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.